All right, so this is the content engine that I built using Claude Cowork and a bunch of agents and skills I've created. So what this actually does is takes a topic with some examples and ideas that I provide and researches that topic and then goes off starting to create different pieces of content based on the templates and skills that I provided. Right. So in this case, it's talking about fully autonomous companies. So there's a few people who have built organizations that are only staffed by AI agents, so zero employees, and these are examples of real companies. So they're not just demos; they're actually out in the wild. There aren't many of those so far. Most of them are experiments. Some of them are more or less jokes. But yeah, so the first thing it does is it does some basic research and then gives me the idea that it wants to anchor on. And from there, start creating different drafts. So there's some manual intervention in the whole system that I built out. And I may or may not use all of the content or just some of the content, but I just want to show you how this works. So let me just move this up here. So let's say concept works, include odd pieces from consultancies, analysts, and content creators. Also include examples, components of AI agents and software components that could be used in creating organizations like this. For example, oops. So for example, Paperclip is an open source orchestration layer to manage teams of AI agents. So you build out agents and the actual technology itself doesn't really matter. So you could have some agents or agentic workflows built in Clay, others running solely on Claude, some stuff built on LangChain that you cobbled up yourself. So what the individual agents are doesn't really matter. So that's a powerful aspect of Paperclip. You can actually combine different technologies. It's just an orchestration layer that sits on top. But of course, you need to decide what to orchestrate, so what those agents are supposed to do. So let's have a look in creating, could be used in creating companies like as an orchestration layer AI agents. Okay, and the agents that I built as part of the Athena operating system, they go off. Well, first it does a research plan. You're probably used to that from like Gemini Deep Research, Perplexity, and other tools. So it's basically something similar, but with some modifications. So I want to make sure it goes through GitHub, Reddit. Yeah, so now it's like going through Google search. So I'm using also combining different search techniques. So you don't really see it by just looking at what's going on here. I can show the agents and connectors and how they're using MCP and different tools later on. And I haven't fully built this out yet, to be fair. This is just, so to speak, proof of concept so far. But the idea is to pipeline different topics and to write about the things that I'm thinking about, that I'm working on, that are my concerns, and over time make sure that the system picks up on the topics that I want to dive deeper into, and then sort of does research and create drafts and content pieces on the back end of this, just like a team of journalists and an editorial team would do. So you become the chief editor, who's also the author and who's also the designer and owner of that system. Right, so doing its research. Okay. Right, so it's still researching. It's now researching consultancies as well that write about this. So this is interesting. Okay, so that's going to take a while. While it's working on this, let's have a look at one of the companies that actually do stuff like this, which is building what I'm building with Pulsia. And it actually just does a very specific thing. I would say it's more of a like a go-to-market platform solution. So it builds like the website and social media content, and actually builds images and Instagram stories and videos. I mean, it's all AI slot. I mean, come on, the website is called Pulsia, so that's funny enough, right? But and I think to a large extent it's experimental. That said, if you look at the overall Pulsia dashboard, assuming that the founder isn't just making up numbers and lying about this, you have a run rate of 4 million ARR. So this isn't really the revenue or profit that they're generating. So this is just the amount of money that's going through their system. So this is monthly subscriptions, which is roughly $50, I think, and then ad spend, and then whatever percentage the companies that run on this platform make, he gets a 20% cut. I'm assuming this is extrapolated, so people probably haven't paid for 12 months of this, so it's probably more like 1/12 or maybe 1/20th of this. But even so, that would mean that this is about $200,000 that were made within, how many days is that? Yeah, give or take 2 weeks. So assume a quarter of that is just out with cloud and AI spend. That's still 150K in 2-3 weeks. It's not bad. That's pretty damn good. That's more than most people make in a year, or heck in 2-3 years. So that is really good, considering that all the company does is sending out tweets, sending out emails, building websites. So you can actually see, if I open one of these, job stream. So this is one of the sort of companies that run on Pulsia. Like, the idea is you enter business site, you have a business concept, paper, a business plan, you enter that. So whatever information and context you provide, it'll pick up on that and it'll start building that out. It'll also go ahead and research you based on the information that you provided. So Pulsia is sort of like a business in a box idea. It doesn't connect to your bank. It just does its own Stripe connection. So that's how it knows how much revenue it can generate for you, because you're basically just using their payment. And I'm not sure the founder or owner of this is really going to expand it in that direction, really build it out. So it still is more of a tech demo, more of a joke than anything else. But it's a signal, right, that things are moving in that direction. Another one is Swan, which looks much more refined, if, in case you couldn't tell, right, if you compare these. But Swan just focuses on GTM agents. So, you give it your CRM, all of your customer information, and it will go and find similar customers. Now, so it'll act like a sales strategist and salesperson, outreach person, business development team, which on the surface sounds like a great idea. But again, just like with Pulsia, having someone else run things on your infrastructure, like tapping into your platforms, into your tools, pulling data in and out, and customers, and just simply the fact that it's getting your client list. In some industries, that's a huge deal. If you work in security, if you're in certain types of consulting or advisory, if you're in legal, you don't want your client list to get out. Like that's a major no. Here you're just enabling that. So this is, if you can tell by the examples, also quite geared towards like e-commerce and similar things. And they're comparing it to, building stuff out in clay and N8N automation, HubSpot triggers. And I mean, if you think about most businesses, most businesses haven't even done anything remotely similar to this crazy image that you can see on the left hand side. Um, like, yeah, if you look at this, not a lot of people. So for most people, most of this stuff is automated, and already this has just been going on or really taking off in the past 3-4 years. Already, this is all outdated now, because now you just get agents with Swan. So yeah, pretty interesting. Let's go back and see what our agent has created. Oh man, I missed I missed the workflow. Okay, let's have a look. Let's go back into what it did. All right, so first it logs into the session, and the reason my system logs into the session, because I'm also keeping track of all of the things that I'm building and all of the improvements, and all of that is logged, both so I can review it later, but also to build out an institutional memory, not just for myself, but for the agents themselves, so that they actually know what they've worked on in the past. So it's about building some persistent memory, which these tools just don't have, and they will compress all of this down to summaries. And you'll see that when you work with Claude Cowork or Claude Code in one conversation for a long time, it'll start compressing it. So you lose a lot of the context and starts hallucinating stuff just because of how LLMs work. So if you want to prevent that, you need some other way of storing what happened in session, the improvements that you made along the way. So this is basically what it does initially when it says logging in the session right here. And then it's reading a bunch of the skills that I have. It's creating like a to-do list, like what is it, that's this agent is supposed to do. Then it's got my brand voice and templates and other things that I'm running. And right now, this is still all text-based. So I haven't gone into image generation, video generation, sound, things like that yet. I have done experiments on this. So I have built like AI avatars of myself and cloned my voice and done things like that. The results are so. So with the current tools like 11 Labs, Midjourney, things like that, you can pull it off. Like you'll get something somewhat decent right out of the box. But you're not nowhere in deep fake territory. Like it's not going to get me with a cranky voice like this. It's not going to get me with rambling, but it's also not going to get the whole emotional range. So to do stuff like this, you really need to actually build out real deep fakes, which take a lot of compute, a lot of work. So this isn't something you can automate yet. Maybe we'll see that in a few years, which could both be great and horrible. All right, so it's running all these commands. So this is how, where it started to do the research. This is where we had left off. Okay, so now it got enough research. So it's got like, I don't know, 40, 50 sources, stuff like this. And then it wrote out the content. Right, so there's a couple of things here. I'm running this in Cowork yet. I've built out a few things in Claude Code, but what I really want to do over time, obviously, is to take this out of Cowork and actually build a system around it, and make sure I orchestrate these agents with something like Paperclip, right? No, that's Paperclip. It's not right. Right. So Paperclip isn't the only orchestration tool out there. There's a bunch of other people that are trying things like this, but you can already see the kind of things people are trying to build with this. So there's a lot in things like small business right now. If you look for typical examples in small businesses, and I'm looking for small and medium-sized businesses for a specific reason, which I'll get to in a bit. But like most of the like main challenges, they're actually pretty straightforward problems that companies have and that they have to deal with day in, day out, right? And you can just run a simple search on this, and this will always return the same kind of problems. The thing is, besides maybe marketing and lead generation, which is a AI slop shit show right now, most people aren't really looking into any of these other things, especially like hiring, recruiting. HR is completely backwards, like still in the stone ages. Just try applying somewhere. So here's the content, and before it actually writes out the content, it will write out the concept of the piece. So it's got a theme. It found some source material. It presents some other angles, some key points. It'll provide some sources, and it will actually go and check these sources and validate those sources. So I have an agent attached to this. So that's a different skill, which the content engine triggers. You just don't see it here yet. Which will go and validate those links. Make sure that those links actually exist. Make sure that the content in those links actually say what the content engine pulled out. Because here's what often happens. Even if LLM platforms don't hallucinate the links, which most of them, if you're using the highest tier model, typically don't do anymore. They've built in checks into those products. But if you click the link, what the content says is actually something completely different, which is funny, especially if you use it in the native content sources of some of these platforms. So just go to Gemini and give it a YouTube link and ask about the transcript. And like 9 times out of 10, it just makes up people who maybe were referred to, makes up those people, which you don't realize unless you actually go look at the YouTube, go back to Gemini and say, look, you're just bullshitting me. Like this person did not appear in this video, and it'll check the transcript again and say, oh, right, I'm sorry. It didn't really cut it in cases. So anyway, it's got the different angles, and I told it that this concept works. So now this is the piece that it generated. So it gives an overview of what this week contains, and I can go to the actual content of it. So you'll see everything from the overall concept, key points, references, proof points. It'll write out a whole YouTube script. So the thing I have not done yet is actually generate the thumbnails automatically, the YouTube description. Yeah, it triggers in writing to make sure that people don't actually notice this. And you can also make edits, like random edits, to make sure that tools that supposedly recognize AI writing don't get triggered, which, by the way, most of these tools do not work. They only have a hit rate of like 60%, so they're slightly better than going. All right, so then it's got the LinkedIn posts, so it's got week by week posts that refer back to their YouTube. CMS, think WordPress, things like that, is actually more trouble than it's worth. At the end of the day, you just need a database to store all of this stuff. And also with just a simple database, I have more flexibility on what I can do with all of this stuff downstream. So yeah. And then finally, once all of that is done, I will start connecting it to these channels, to the platforms, to push this stuff out automatically.